coming from. And there's still processes that need to happen. And for me, most of the clients who are looking for the new things are basically people who have the old things. When we sold them a man to begin with, there was a big expectation that a man was like a silver bullet. He was the answer to everything. You buy a man and all your problems go away. Well, software doesn't really work that way. Software is solving a problem in front of you, making something a little bit better than it was before. And typically, we go from version 1 to version 2 to version 10 because we don't get all the answers right to begin with. Now, if you're going to deploy MAN or new trends in video technology, we're going to have to understand the problems. And I tried to, in the first session, tell you the sort of problems we have. And I managed to get the video of the NASCAR one, so you can see the processes that need to be followed in order to make things work. Now, once you're doing these things, everybody starts to come back and says, can we do this better? Can we be more efficient? What's new? What can help us? We alluded to things like AI. So if you just bear with me for just a couple more minutes, I'll show you what we did at NASCAR. This was a long time ago, and you'll still see tapes. But you'll see the processes that went into what. Let's just run this and so we can see where we come from. I'll try to explain it. So this was the big facility. But really I was involved with the third floor. Now the third floor is the production center. This is where it was. And this is the heart of it. Essentially, this is centralized engines. This is what I did because of what we did in the Volvo Ocean Race. So basically, here we have centralized engines. Here we have a system of central. It's basically a hole in the wall. We don't trust anyone. This young man over here, we trust him. And this is what's happening. They're bringing in, back in the day, this was quite revolutionary. We were bringing in a drive. Then we hand it over and we barcoded the tapes. Why? Because bringing files into a system is fundamental to what we do. If I talk about my new products are trying to make this process more easy. Yeah? This is a new trend because the old trend, oh, I have a laser as well. I can take down pilots. If we bring in files, we need to track them. When it was tapes, we were putting barcodes because the tapes lived on the shelf. These days, with digital files, we need to have a similar process. It's not going to be barcodes, though. Okay? So these are the steps that needed to be taken because the problems aren't changing. So, let me make that big again. So, that was, okay, it's form filling. These are the forms we need to fill in. We need metadata. Can we get this in other ways? Well, I haven't got my iPad with me, but my new trend, my current thinking is, I want to get this metadata not at this stage. I want to get it from location. I want people to give me information from out there, not doing it in here. Right? Why? And we'll leverage the cloud to do this. Because the best place to start getting metadata is on location. Why are you shooting it? So this young man could ask me how I spell my name. So I found in my hotel that they spelled my name wrong, so I couldn't get Wi-Fi until I figured out how they spelled my name. And simple things like that go wrong. Now if I was shooting this, you could ask me how to spell my name, and we would have that metadata. It's easy to do. But when I've come back to the facility, I've gone away from that situation, I don't know how I can get that metadata. So a new trend, I think, is to get metadata, or what I'm working on, is get metadata from set. Now, we have many devices, and cameras have become very, very cheap. The first camera I bought, it cost 3 times more than my house. But I bought my camera as a film camera. Now Blackmagic will give you one. Or they give you Resolve, they give you for a few $1,000. A DSLR, under $1,000. And you can do HD and 4K. And that is hugely, hugely different. So we have more cameras. So how do we, and we also have different devices. We have audio devices, sound devices. There's a new sound recorder from Zoom, an F4. This is $600, but it is time-coded. So one of the new trends that we're constantly looking for is to tie all the different devices together, including your iPads, because you can take contemporaneous notes as you're conducting an interview. We could make notes which have a timestamp, and that metadata can feed into the system. Now, the only way I'm working at the minute, figuring out how to do it, is to have these little time code modules. We lock it to time of day. We lock it to time of day, and we lock it to date, and we lock it to location. I think those 3 tags give us sufficient information that we can apply it to a project. Okay? So I kept thinking, and I don't know if it's new, but I don't know anyone else doing it, is to take an object and look at how people really think about media. Now, I always have to go back to my past because that's the only thing I really understand. And in my past as an editor, if you watch a good editor, we could have millions of clips inside Final Cut or inside the Avid. And a producer could say, I need that shot of the CEO of NASCAR. And I can find it very quickly. Because in my brain, and I think human beings are wired a little bit different, they're not wired like computers. I think we think visually, and we make associations in our brain with things. Now, often when I was cutting corporate things, we never knew the name of the interviewer, who we were interviewing. We never knew that. But I would remember him as the guy in, the white shirt, or the guy with the dicky bowl. And I would remember that, and I would make an association with it. And I would have a bin in my edit suite. And I would go, I know it's there. It would just be a visual memory because it was on my screen. And as I tried to do some research into how we find things, I started to find some interesting stuff about how the brain is wired. And we seem to be better at it visually. So, you go down this sort of research route, and there are people who will teach you how to remember things. And there was a game on TV where a conveyor belt went past, and things went past, and if you could remember them all, you won them. So how do you build lists in your minds? Well, magicians will teach you about to do it spatially. They'll basically say, walk into a room, or walk into a house. Then imagine going into a room on your right, and see something. See the object you want to remember, and make an association with a very, very graphic idea, like a hippopotamus on a bicycle, holding the thing you want to remember. And this makes a very strong connection in the brain, differently to a text-based thing. And they say, okay, so you walk into the house, so they're trying to get you to map space. And you would walk out of that room with a picture in your head, and the more outrageous the image was, the more you were likely to remember it. And then you would walk into another room in your brain on the left and open the door and see something on a piano. The object you wanted to remember on top of a piano with something else. And this is how they teach you how to remember long, long, long lists of something. And it works because the way our brains are wired. Now, I knew that to be the case from my editing experience. We could always remember stuff. I can watch stuff on TV, and I can know within less than 2 seconds whether I've seen a movie. I can remember the frames. You all watch TV? You turn on your channel hopping? You watch it for how long before you know you've seen it? 10 seconds? Oh, I've seen this one. We'll hop on. There's something we're wired differently. So I'm trying to think if we can harness some of those things. But it was just my perception that we don't need as much of this metadata as we thought. But what we need is the right sort of metadata in the right place for different people, different times. So here in NASCAR, we're filling in forms. And I don't think this is the way forward, but in some deep archive, we will still be filling in forms. I think we're good with it. So again, if you put in, at this stage, rubbish, you know, the whole thing about garbage in, garbage out, even if we type it, if it's incorrect, it remains incorrect forever. In NASCAR, I had to create a system, we called it yellow flags, where if somebody spotted something that was incorrect, we could flag it so somebody could correct it. We needed to validate the data. And usually the only way we could validate it was against somebody who knew something. If 3 people said this was wrong, we would believe them. And organizations lose information. I call it the guy walks out the door. The guy who was doing all this gets another job, he walks out the door, and the entity, the business, loses all that knowledge. And I've seen that a lot of places. Now, big organizations cannot lose data like that just because somebody changes job. We have to try and put it inside our systems. And as my customers learn more and more that this was the case, they come back with new demands. And they're the sort of trends that are peaking. They want more out of the systems. They don't want to be dependent on human beings as much because they can walk out the door. Now this room, we're very proud of this room. This is ingest. Okay? There's a lot going on. All these guys are rushing around, literally doing it and bringing in files. They're doing it, filling in forms, they're bringing in data. They are busy guys. Now, no one can do anything until these guys have done their job. We don't release it to the editors, the producers, until we've got this metadata right. The new stuff I'm working on is to reduce this so that anybody can do it. I alluded it to before. If we're going to cloud-based systems, we have to move away from centralized ingest. We have to be able to ingest from here, from here, from here, from here, and still get it right. Yeah, and that's a bit of a challenge. Now, these guys were good. And these are the systems we're doing. There's so many different things we need to do. These are ingesting satellite feeds. Now, satellite feeds are very, very long files, typically 4 or 5 hours. And we had to treat them differently. So we were able to add metadata as we were ingesting. Okay, so that's what we call tagging. We were basically able to buffer the streams and add metadata. So that's what these guys. Now this is CatDB. There's a couple of shots of CatDB. I walked in one morning and 10,000 files have got stuck on the system because of permissions issues. They're computer systems, but somehow the XAM it was at the time, the permission system had got messed up. No files would move because on XAM the permissions propagate. And nobody knew in the organization, other than me, how to chmod. Right? You know what chmod is? Yes. Computer stuff. Basically, if the permissions are wrong, you can change the permissions on a Unix system by going *.* chmod 777. Now I did this on all these files and everything moved. But I got into big trouble because IT didn't like me doing this. But I was asked by the head of the organization to why are the files not moving, so I did it. And what we find that there's a struggle between people like myself and IT. IT and the department would like to say no. They always say no because they're frightened that something will go wrong. And they're right, it's their job. When we're ingesting files, we can be bringing in viruses. Now in media, nobody wants to check for viruses. Why? Because it slows you down. No one likes to slow you down, right? But it's still a problem. So then we go, okay, well we can have an air-gapped computer, we'll check for viruses. When it's all checked, we'll we'll take you physically over from this system to this system and we're safe. No one likes that. No one likes that at all. But if we do so, we're upping the problems with permissions because we're going from one system to another. So they're bringing in thousands and thousands and thousands of files. And this is the way we used to do it. So look at the file names. 11 VNF 121, oh, 18, blah, 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 blah. Not very descriptive. And there's thousands of them. Which is the one we want to make our show? Or if it's an archive, which is the right one? People want simplicity. They want it to work like Google. Okay? Why can't it work like Google, you say? And then I go, okay, how does Google work? Well, Google doesn't work like they think it works. Google is a relevance engine, and if we search Google and we look for my name, we'll find on page 1, 10 hits, and if you read the bottom and say 1 of 2 million, right? Because there can be many, many more hits. Now, in our world, it doesn't work like that because we're looking for something specific, right? So relevance doesn't quite come into it, and if you're not on the first page of Google, you don't exist. But we know this stuff exists. So when you're dealing with users, I can tell you, you basically get 3 chances to get a user to buy into a system. If you put a producer down on a system, and you show him new stuff, and you say, okay, I will look for something I know is there. So you'll type something in, and if it doesn't come up, he goes, it's broken. And you say, oh no, you've typed the wrong thing, or you made a spelling mistake. So you type something else, it comes up, it doesn't come up. He goes, your system's not very good. He'll give it one more go, and then he decides it's too much time, too much effort for me to use the system. And that's what we call buy-in from users. If you don't get buy-in from users, they don't get anything out of the system, they don't use it. And I've sold systems that people do not use because it was too much effort. So, what is the demand from the market? We want to make it simple. We want to make it like Google. But actually, they don't want to make it like Google, that's what they say. They want it to work like email. Okay? So, what happens if you're looking for me in email? You type into Outlook my name, right? Hey, there's everything. That's good. Now, his first thing works. Now he's got another problem. He doesn't care at this minute. Oh yeah, I've got everything. I've got now 10,000